Be very, very quiet. We're hunting coffee.
But it's tea season.
Never tea season. Not in the bearded household.
Well, hey, you drink a lot of coffee and tea,
True.
so it
True.
works out. It balances out a little bit.
True.
Well, this is the Caffeinated Podcast. This is obviously the show where positivity is our goal. Chaos happens to be the process. Welcome. And you may notice there's a gigantic question mark that we had to make sure was written in reverse, but we do have a special guest, and I'm going to let the beard announce them.
Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce. I don't want him to have to hold that for very long. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure and honor to have the owner of Coffeetarian with us tonight, Mr. John Pop. Welcome, John.
What's up, guys?
So,
thank you for having me on.
No, man, we appreciate you. We appreciate your coffee. Just FYI, for those that are watching and listening, BUBBZI and I are drinking a brand new coffee for us tonight. We just got in the single source Colombian. And John, if you have, I know you've probably tried most of them and maybe not have been able to try all of them yet, but this one is smooth. You're going to like it, and it's good. Just straight black. It's that smooth.
He fell in love as soon as he brewed it. I'm not going to lie.
Right?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, they say that Colombian coffee, in terms of like single origins, they say Colombian coffee is the highest selling across the country statistically. And I think a lot of that has to do with, you know, my parents' generation growing up in those commercials where it's like people were like, that's Colombian coffee. You know, they have that word association.
Yep.
So they hear Colombian and they think, oh, that's rich, bold coffee. And there's merit to that. So it is a great single origin. I have had ours, and I really do like it. So I'm glad you like it.
It's up there it's climbing up my favorites list. There's, you know, right now Mexican is probably at the very top of my favorites list. That is by far the best coffee I've ever drank. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we tell people about this all the time. I talk about the coffee on TikTok all the time. We've got folks that come in and go, okay, what's the flavor of the day? Because they've come to realize I don't always drink just one flavor every day. Yeah. So,
right.
You know, it's kind of like shoes. You got to have what you're in the mood for, right?
That's right. And, you know, people ask me, they're like, where should I start? And a lot of times I'll tell them like, hey, try Guatemala. And then based on that, you know, do you like the fruitier, more bright notes? Do you like the chocolatier, rich notes? Do you like the spice in it a little bit? And that kind of gives you directions for like, all right, now I have a baseline, so now I can try this coffee or that coffee. And kind of, you know, everybody's flavor profile is a little bit different. Everybody has those tasting notes in their coffee that they like, that maybe the next person likes it okay, but they're not in love with it. And so being able to kind of try the different regions of the world out, the different flavors or the different blends, that really kind of helps you lock in what really is the flavor profile that you like. And that kind of, you kind of hone into some favorites. And Mexico is certainly one of my favorites as well. That's a great single origin.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't figured out yet, this entire episode is going to be about one of my favorite things, coffee. So the title is just straight out Coffeetarian. We're going to talk a little bit about John. We're going to talk a little bit about how he became coffee obsessed like I did and how that led to Coffeetarian. We're also going to talk about, you know, what exactly is Coffeetarian. You've heard BUBBZI and my attempt to share that information a few times. We do our best, but John will be able to do it so much better. Right?
You guys do an awesome job.
Then we're going to talk about, you know, because you hear the questions, John, and I know you've heard it before. Isn't all coffee the same? You know, what makes good coffee? You know, why is some coffee better? And for those that are really just getting into it, we're also going to talk about where do you start if you want better coffee and you're on a budget. You know, right. I'm on a budget. I didn't spend a whole lot of stuff on money on my stuff to begin with. And I do have, John has a coffee maker that I'm extremely jealous of that I am saving for, by the way. Right.
It's a good one.
Then John is going to give us a little demonstration. He's going to tell you, kind of walk you through it. And tell you, like, we're going to talk about how the difference in grind, like he said, can change the notes of the flavor of the coffee.
Mhm.
So, and guys, that's kind of just, how we kind of have a basic skeleton of where we're going to go. And then we just let the rabbits run and let the conversation go where it needs to go. But I've been looking forward to this. I've been excited about it since we started talking about it. And anybody that's been on TikTok or YouTube or whatever knows that Coffeetarian is one of those places that I talk about a lot. And I'm not going to suggest something that I don't drink myself, or BUBBZI and I said it before, John, we're not going to have a sponsor if we don't like the stuff. We're
Absolutely.
not just going to do it to have a sponsor.
I'm here for the caffeine. So
yeah. But so let's do it this way, guys. How about this? John, why don't you tell us a little bit about you,
Okay.
who you are, what you do, and then we'll just jump into how the obsession started. And BUBBZI and I'll maybe throw a question or two in there, but we want to know as much about it as you can possibly tell us.
All righty. Well, yeah. So again, my name is John, and I'm the owner of Coffeetarian, which is a relatively new company. We just started this year, 2021, kind of in the middle of the craziness that's going on, pandemic kind of world. But yeah, I am a lover of coffee. I'm obsessed with not only coffee itself, but the different ways to make it, the different little things you can do that make such a big impact on the taste and the flavor profiles and things like that. Big fan and supporter of the Caffeinated podcast. I've caught every single one of their episodes since they launched, and so we love them. I actually have known these guys for years on a personal level, and they're both awesome people. And so they started up this podcast, and even though the topics vary week to week and the discussions are different, I think it's just awesome. It's awesome entertainment. It's awesome because it does kind of feel like that you kind of invited these guys into your living room, and you just kind of get to listen to them chat back and forth, and talk about their different perspectives. I think that's an awesome thing, and I love that we have the power of social media and podcasts and stuff to be able to diversify and even challenge each other in what we think and that kind of stuff. So that's awesome. We big supporters of the podcast, and they were talking about wanting some sponsorships to line up and stuff like that. And so I reached out to them and I said, hey, I would love to be your first sponsor. I would love to help support you guys. They already support our company. They were on the ground floor of ordering from us when we first launched, and trying out the products and giving me their feedback. So
if I had started my wall a whole lot sooner, they may know how much we actually love your coffee. Just so it's growing by the week.
Right.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, we started his whole TikTok. We were doing coffee reviews too. So we had just thousands upon thousands of different bags of coffee. And then you launched a coffee company. We're like, okay, these are all great.
Yeah. Well, and the awesome thing was, like, we actually had gotten several orders in, several different customers in our first couple months, and so we wanted to do like a drawing and like a giveaway, and it wasn't planned or scripted. It was 100% as random as it could be, and the beard won, and so we got him that hat and everything. But already they were supporters of the company, and we support what they do with the podcast and how it honestly does. I think it. And I've told these guys this, just off camera, and I'll say it on camera. I think that what these guys are doing is important, because where there's so much negativity in the world, there's so much, people are, being divided over a litany of things, everything, right? Yeah, absolutely. So to have people who their only aim is to make you smile, to make you laugh, to make you feel good, to make you think. That really, honestly, I do think we need people out there who are lifting up people's spirits and giving them a reason to smile. And so, what's not to love about that? And the fact that they love coffee, it's a match made in heaven, right?
Well, John, before I ask you how the obsession actually started, guys, for those that you are listening and who are watching on YouTube, do us a favor, like, comment, subscribe, share, let everybody know, because these guys, their company, outside of having great coffee, they have a heart to help. And we're going to talk about that more here in just a minute. But every time you buy from Coffeetarian, you get to be a part of the blessing that they're bestowing on other people. And I just wanted to put that in there before we even get into all that. So, John, I guess where we got to start. How did the obsession start?
That's a great question. And I do get asked that from time to time, especially when people see all the different, things that I've collected for brewing coffee, and the fact that I was even interested in the fact that I was even interested in starting my own coffee company. It's like, well, what got you into coffee? And it couldn't be more perfect the way that these guys opened the show, because they mentioned it's tea season, coffee season. What got me into coffee was tea. I remember thinking, like, tea is awful. Like, it doesn't taste good. You put the little bag in the water and, like, why do people drink this? It's not good. And so I just always had this perception of, like, tea is not great. And I would drink soda. And one time I was in a store. It was a tea store, and this guy who worked there challenged me. He said, I'll make you the best cup of tea you've ever had. And if it's not life-changing, then I'll let you go. And I told these guys, I said, man, I tried this blend of loose leaf tea that he made, and $180 later, I'm walking out of the store with all this gear piled up. And so that got me into loose leaf tea, and I started, really kind of getting into the sciences of the water temperatures and the origins that the leaves come from and all of that kind of stuff. And tea has its own world, which I love and appreciate. But I remember, I didn't really get into drinking coffee till I was in college. I would be working late in the computer labs and things like that, and I would drink coffee. But I was, at that time, I drank coffee. Really, what I like to say is, I drank a little bit of coffee with my milk and sugar, right? Is really what it was. My experience with coffee was just pile creamer and sugar into it, and then put a little bit of coffee, and that's about all I could stomach. And so then I remember I got into tea and all the different, the different flavor profiles and everything you can do with tea. And I remember thinking, I wonder if coffee's the same way. Coffee's natural. It grows on trees. It comes from all over the world, different origins. And I remember thinking, if tea has its own world, what does the coffee world look like? And little did I know, until I started getting into it, that coffee, the world of coffee, is actually even larger by far than the world of tea. But that got me into, starting to do things like I would sign up for coffee subscriptions, and I would take a tour of different regions around the world in terms of coffee profiles, trying out different countries' coffees. And really, that was the first time I actually could drink coffee with nothing in it. Like, I remember I would drink it with just a little bit of sweetener, and then eventually it was like, man, the flavors came out so well that putting anything in the coffee usually took away from the notes. And when you have really high quality coffee, the more sweeteners and things like that you put in, the more you're actually going to mask the natural flavors that good, fresh quality coffee brings out. And so I started, and I didn't have anything. I had a Keurig. That was it. Just the single pod little machine. That was all I had. Sorry. And and they get a lot of grief even from me, but it was a place to start. So from there, it was, okay, how can I up my game? And it was buying things like a Chemex, and then a French press, then a pour over, and upgrading my coffee machines and upgrading grinders, and learning about water temperature and how different degrees make a difference, how grind size makes a difference, like the Beard mentioned. And so it was like all these things in this world of coffee were kind of unlocked, and it was a little overwhelming at first. But I started following people who would do videos and do informational stuff. And one of the best sources that I plug all the time is a man in the UK named James Hoffmann, Hoffmann, James Hoffmann.
Yeah, guys, if you are even in the least bit interested, John turned me on to James Hoffmann's YouTube page. Go check it out. He is just straight to the point. And he'll tell you how to make a good cup of coffee, and he will up your coffee game. Now, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but I want to ask you,
you're good.
Isn't the science part of it, the science part of the making the coffee, isn't it one of the things that's as almost as interesting as the flavor. At least it is for me. You know, I love because how much coffee beans by the gram and how much water and all this stuff. And there's probably people listening and are going to be watching going, oh my gosh, they're going to go all nerdy. It's amazing when you see what you can do with just a few extra beans, a little couple of different notches on your grind. Yeah. And it just blows your mind the way the same coffee you drank yesterday changes because you did something just a little bit different.
I'm just saying, if they're expecting us not to go nerdy, considering the topics we have covered, like, okay, first of all, we went to Comic-Con, like, we're talking nerdy. I love to talk about time theory. I'll bring it up at any opportunity. Like,
well, time is important when you're making coffee.
That it is. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. Sometimes people will see my coffee setup and they'll say things like, it looks like you're doing a science experiment. And in a way, I kind of am every time. I love my coffee pot and I love it in the morning, especially when I wake up early and have to go to work and, you know, coffee's ready and here we go. But there's something fascinating to me about the art of brewing coffee. So every chance I get to be able to do pour overs or, you know, the science behind the time in a French press and how long the coffee can sit there and extract, or pulling espresso shots and trying out different time ratios and stuff like that with espresso. There's an art to it. Honestly, there is. Not just latte art. There's the art and the science of coffee that is fascinating. And it absolutely, I remember I got my wife into drinking coffee, and she was kind of like I used to be, you know, with milk and sugar and cream and all of it. And I remember the first couple times I had her drinking coffee with almost nothing in it, maybe just a little packet of sweetener. And even that, she was like, I never thought I'd be the kind of person to drink black coffee. And now she's like, the coffee's so good, if I put stuff in it, it actually takes away from the coffee. And so now, even my wife is sold on it.
I know that here in just a minute, we're going to talk about Coffeetarian itself and the reason behind Coffeetarian and what you guys do. And then we're going to do some coffee talk. We're going to talk about this some more. But I just want to interject here for just some. I've had people tell me I've never had a good cup of coffee. And I'm just saying, you've never had a cup of coffee fixed properly. You know, because if you take the time, if you put the effort in, just like a good meal, you're going to get an excellent cup of coffee. And it also depends on the coffee that you get. I mean, seriously, I have nothing against the big brands out there on the shelf. Okay, I don't. But you just do not know how long that coffee's been sitting in a warehouse and then sitting on the shelf. And that will affect the flavor. So those who've said that may honestly have never really had a good cup of coffee.
Either that,
but I challenge anybody. I'll make somebody a cup of coffee if they want it. You know what I'm saying?
Either that or they only go to Starbucks.
No. Get that word out your mouth.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, they haven't had a good cup because they only go to Starbucks.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I'm just, yeah. So
when people talk about like having a bad, like I've never had a good cup of coffee, and you ask them like, well, what was it that you didn't like about the coffee? A lot of times you'll hear the same themes. It was bitter. It tasted burnt. It was, and that's all indications. It's like, don't judge coffee by that experience.
Right.
Because there's a whole world that's so much better than the I'm sorry, but the unfortunate experience you had with that coffee.
Well, I'll put it in this context, and then we're going to talk about the company. If you've got a favorite steakhouse that always makes your steak right, and then you go somewhere else, then you're going to compare their steak to that really good steak made your way. And it's the same thing with coffee. Once you find a place, if they do it properly, that you like, I'd stick with it. But once you learn how to do it yourself, you can repeat it over and over and over again. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So, John, tell us a little bit about Coffeetarian. I mean, BUBBZI and I know a little bit about it. We've talked a little bit about it in our ads and stuff like that. But tell us the heart behind Coffeetarian.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had been into coffee for a couple of years and just trying to tweak my own experience. And I, would get coffee shipped to my house because you just can't buy good quality freshness from a store shelf. You just can't. It's exactly what you mentioned. Even if the coffee was fresh at one time, by the time it makes it to your big chain, grocery stores and things like that, all of that coffee's had to go through a distribution center. It's had to be put on trucks, then put on the back of the store, and then eventually moved to the front of the store as the shelves start to, empty. And in all reality, coffee, it's good for a long time in terms of like FDA standards on it going bad. It takes usually like 24 months or more for coffee to actually kind of go bad. Mm-hmm. But there is a very small window of freshness that you just usually can't get at a grocery store. If you do, it would be some, small rare chance of fate that you actually got good quality fresh coffee from a grocery store, just because of the shipping process and the distribution. So normally when you go buy coffee, even if it's a higher end coffee from your local grocery stores, it's usually at least 6 months old. And what coffee roasters do a lot of times, and I totally understand this, is they don't put a best buy date on the bag that goes on the store shelves. They'll put like an expiration date. And so when you go in and you know that according to FDA standards, coffee doesn't expire for 2 years, and you look at the shelf and it says doesn't expire till, June 2022, you think, oh man, this coffee must be fresh.
Yep.
In all reality, right. And in all reality, it could be 6 months, 12 months old. And coffee, the longer it goes, the more those vibrant flavors that come out when you brew coffee the right way, those vibrant flavors get more muted over time. And so eventually, kind of as the coffee naturally stales, you lose that ability to pull those flavors out. So sometimes people will say, I haven't had a good cup of coffee. And it's because they've either gotten it at like a restaurant that's just mass produced, or they've gotten it from a store shelf thinking, this is a brand new thing of coffee. I pulled the seal off of it. But really, it's been sitting there for months and months and months. So specialty coffee, which is what we sell, has been around for a long time. It's been around for decades, actually. But what's interesting is a lot of people still don't know about it. They don't know that there's a difference between your store brand that everybody knows versus a single origin, Mexico or Guatemala. They don't understand that there really is a difference. And specialty coffee's been around for a while, but what I find is that the information is slow in terms of its reaching people. However, with things like, the pandemic that we're in, where a lot of people are either working from home or, there was times where things were shut down and they had to be from home, people started to take an interest in coffee and in specialty coffee because stores kind of rose up online and kind of got popular that would ship coffee to your door. Well, now, if I've got to wait for my groceries to be shipped to me anyways, I could just have coffee shipped to me just like I do things on Amazon, because who knows that we all love to buy things from Amazon and have the pretty little package show up at our door, right? Well, now I can do the same thing with coffee. I don't have to leave the house, but it's 1,000 times more fresh when it's shipped to my door from a specialty roaster than it is on the store shelves. And so just to give you a comparison, like I said, coffee that's on a grocery store shelf, usually 6 months to 12 months old. Our company and several other specialty companies, when you place your order, the coffee beans are roasted on demand, which means they're not roasting the beans until your order comes in.
Yeah.
They roast the beans, they ship them to you the same day out the door, or they will, if they're grinding it, they'll grind it, let the CO2 release, and package it and sell it ship it the very next day. And you're talking that it's on your porch or at your front door, usually within somewhere between 4 to 7 days. Yeah. And the optimal time to drink coffee, to brew coffee, is about 4 days and on from the day it was roasted, because there's a lot of CO2 that gets trapped.
I think we usually get ours right about 5 days every time we order. So,
and that's the average is 5 days, and that's the perfect
time. It just makes
time.
all the difference in the world. And, it's one of the questions, that's in the next one, but you're answering it here. Isn't all coffee the same? Well, no, coffee is not all the same.
Not at all. And so with that rise of specialty coffee and the pandemic and everything like that, and my love of coffee, the thought naturally came, okay, I want to be able to help people in this time where people are experiencing loss or fear or they're experiencing tough times, you wouldn't believe, and I didn't even really know it until I got into starting up Coffeetarian, but you wouldn't believe the impact that things like this pandemic has had on the ability for nonprofits to raise money.
Right.
I've literally had meetings with nonprofits where their directors are in tears saying, every big fundraiser we do throughout the year that we rely on is an in-person fundraiser. And what has been really kind of stifled or even canceled during this pandemic is in-person fundraisers. You're talking, a lot of these nonprofits will hold banquet dinners, fundraising dinners for hundreds or even thousands of people. And then all of a sudden, that's their primary way to make money that they're going to use to operate the entire year. And now those things are gone. And so that really kind of struck us on how can I take two things that I'm passionate about? Number one, helping people. And number two, coffee. And how can I combine those things and actually even start a business in the middle of a pandemic that is a viable option for people? And that's where I'll give all the credit to my wife, who runs the company with me. We were talking about this idea of wanting to start a coffee company where we could ship coffee to somebody's door, all online, anywhere in the country, and that we would pair it with nonprofits, and that we would take a percentage of every single sale on the website, and we would directly give these to foundations across the nation, and starting here locally where we're at. And I said, what do we even call this? And she said, man, I love it. It's coffee. It's humanitarian efforts. We should call it Coffeetarian.
I love it.
And I was like, how did you do that? Like, how did you just come up with that? I'm sitting here for hours brainstorming, and she just off the top of her head. But I mean, just an amazing name that represents us, coffee and humanitarian efforts paired together. And so we wanted to offer something that was completely online, that people could buy stuff just like they buy on Amazon. They could buy stuff, whether it be a hat, a shirt, a cup, or coffee from our website. Yep. And it would immediately help by going to these different foundations. Yeah. And I've had nonprofits call me up and say, thank you, because we didn't know how we were going to raise money right now, because the pandemic right now, we're still in the middle of it. And so people were saying, we didn't know how we were going to help raise money. I had one nonprofit who reached out to me completely, like they found my contact information, reached out to me, and I said, how did you hear about us? From maybe one of the other nonprofits we work with. They said, we Googled how to fundraise during a pandemic, like unique ways. And she said, your company came up in our Google results.
Come on.
And I was like, well, that's amazing.
I love it.
That's just, you never know how the internet works, right? It's right. I'm in software, and it's still a black box to me. It's a mystery.
So, ladies and gentlemen who are watching and listening, do you understand now why BUBBZI and I were so tickled when Coffeetarian said, hey, we want to start sponsoring the podcast? Because you've heard us say it before, and unfortunately you'll hear me say it a whole lot more. Our goal with the podcast and all the other stuff is to lift people up, to make people smile, to help get you out of your headspace and help somebody have a better day. Right. And here's a company that is trying to do that, bring you really good coffee, but also trying to make people's day a little bit better financially when a lot of those avenues have been shut. Yeah. This is why I say, go check them out. Check out the coffee. You won't be disappointed. You'll actually probably be really excited like I was. I mean, I think if I remember correctly, John, the first one I ordered was Cowboy Blend because it's a good medium dark roast, and we love it. And that's usually what I tell everybody to start with, because to me, that's kind of a medium ground or medium grind, Yeah. And it gives them a good base to start with. Right. And then you can just play from there, And
we've been so blessed to work with so many awesome nonprofits. We launched with a social media organization called Leora Strong that was directly some friends of ours walked through a very tough season where their daughter had stage 4 cancer as a 6-year-old girl, and just an amazing miracle that little girl is. She's now completely in remission from cancer. They thought that that was going to be it. And then all of a sudden, just a miracle happens in her life. She's thriving. Her hair's growing back. She's a beautiful little girl. And so we paired, like when we launched the company, we said we want to start there because that's a story near and dear to our hearts. They were friends of ours. And they worked with an organization called Granted, which is in the tri-state area where we're at. And they kind of help fill in the gaps. Make-A-Wish Foundation is a nationwide organization. But there's such a need that Make-A-Wish Foundation can't get to every kid.
Right.
And so Granted said, hey, in our area, we're going to fill the gaps by helping to grant children who are walking through stuff that not only should adults not ever have to face the kinds of things, but children, man, they're so innocent, and having to face things like cancer at such an early age, it's heartbreaking to watch. And so Granted, they come in and they help children who are going through the unimaginable find hope and find joy in their life by granting wishes for them. So that was the very first organization we worked with. And from there, we've gotten to work with Central Kentucky Riding for Hope. They use animal therapy to treat children with autism. They treat veterans with PTSD. They'll work with people who have high anxiety. They'll work with muscular disorders. And they use the beauty of horses and how powerful animal connections with humans are. And they use those animal therapies to really just bring a smile to children and to veterans and everything, and really and help them in their therapeutic processes. We're working with right now, as you guys have heard on the sponsorship ad, we're working with New Breed in their Educate Liberia initiative. We're helping them build a school in Africa where there hasn't been a school in like generations. And so literally we're doing a big push. We have a big in-person fundraiser that our company is going to be at, and it's going to be here in the area where we're pushing for, there's going to be door prizes and there's going to be games and stuff like that. But there's also going to be presentations and guest speakers, and really trying to raise the money because we want to see, we're very close. I mean, we are extremely close to having the school fully funded. They've already got the building. They've already started on the construction. Now they're starting to look at how many desks do we need? How many school supplies in each area do we need? They're like at that level. And so we're trying to just get that completely finished off so that they can open school. We're hoping they'll open school next year for the school in Liberia. And that's awesome.
Like I'm taking this light, guys, for those that, who are watching and all that, but go to coffeetarian.store. Check out the coffee. Check out the hats, check out the shirts like John is wearing, check out the coffee mugs, which are excellent. They keep your coffee nice and hot for a good long period of time, right? And while you're enjoying good coffee, you can take satisfaction in the moment knowing that somebody's going to be enjoying an education because you bought coffee.
Yeah.
Or because you bought a coffee mug. See, that's the thing, guys. It doesn't take a whole lot for us to change the world.
That's
we
right.
sit where we are when all this stuff is going on, and we think that we can't do anything. I'm not telling you have to do anything. I'm suggesting please go buy some coffee, enjoy some great flavors, and help somebody get an education. I mean, BUBBZI, I know you're just here for the caffeine, but you can't beat that deal, right?
No. No, not at all. Plus, I will say,
go ahead.
I'm just saying, and Chris, this is skipping over a little bit. I probably have now found number one so far for at least coffee flavors. At least
he likes the Colombian.
There you go.
I'm just saying.
There you go.
And I don't mean to put BUBBZI on the spot, but y'all need to know he stole that coffee cup. I'm just saying.
And the awesome thing is, there's no limit to the great organizations out there that are helping. Mm. Part of the thing that we want to do is not only contribute financially to those organizations, but we want to bring awareness to them. There are so many good causes that they don't have a multi-million-dollar marketing campaign. They don't have a huge outreach. And so there's some amazing people in this world. I mean, amazing people doing amazing things that they'll never get recognition for.
Right.
And the least we can do is use our small circle of influence to try to bring awareness to those causes.
Absolutely.
I mean, if we can help somebody learn about a cause that can touch their life or someone they know, and maybe you didn't buy coffee, but you just help spread awareness. To me, it's all about how can we all do our part, and like Kevin said, it doesn't change much. it doesn't take much for us to change the world. It just takes everybody doing their part.
Right. And
And it's awesome.
And that's the thing. I mean, we know that there are so many causes out there that need help. And I know that John and the Coffeetarian team are going to do their best to help as many as they can. But the simple fact is, and again, I'm not trying to put pressure. Please don't anybody think that. But the more that you can do, or the more that you want to do, I'll say it like this. If Coffeetarian just started doing subscriptions. You can get weekly or monthly pre-done subscriptions. It'll just show up. You don't have to worry about reordering it or anything like that. You can do that. All right. Or if you just want to go in every once in a while and buy a bag of coffee or buy somebody a hat or buy somebody a coffee mug for a Christmas, birthday, whatever, you can do that. But see, here's the thing. You think, well, Beard, I don't have a whole lot of money. Okay. Then tell somebody about this great company. Tell them about the website where they can go and do it. And you're still a part of the blessing. You're still helping change the world simply by telling somebody about something that you heard about. Mm-hmm. The only way that we don't help is if we're quiet, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, and also I want to encourage anybody that's watching this or listening to this. Maybe you know of an amazing organization that's helping people. Maybe you're a part of a nonprofit, or you work for a nonprofit, or you know one. Hit our website up. We have a contact page. Send us an email through the website and say, hey, I know of this organization, and let us know about these so that we can reach out to them and form these partnerships. And let me tell you this, because we get asked this sometimes. Well, what do you require of the nonprofit, or what do you charge the nonprofit to be able to be featured on your website? And the answer is forever and always zero. We don't ask the nonprofits to do anything. We don't make them pay a fee to be featured on our website. We don't ask anything of them. In fact, it's so much us just saying, what can we do to help you guys? So if you have a nonprofit and you say, hey, it'd be cool if Coffeetarian worked with this nonprofit that I know of, go to the website, go to the contact page, and let us know, and we'll try to reach out and make this happen. We've already got partnerships lined up through spring into summer of next year, but we're always looking for new ones to take on and to work with.
For some reason, for whatever reason, you can't, we'll have the link in the description, of course. But if for some reason you can't do it or whatever, you just don't think, but drop it in the comments. Yeah. BUBBZI and I will make sure that Coffeetarian and John get the information that you put in there. Okay. And again, do you understand now, ladies and gentlemen, why BUBBZI and I are so excited to be a part of Coffeetarian? We always said that our goal with the podcast was to change the world. It may just be our little world, but by spreading love and positivity, and come on now, coffee, we can change the world, right? So we kind of answered the question a little while ago, John, is all coffee the same? Well, we know that's it's just not the case. But what makes for good coffee? Why is some coffee so much better than others, do you think?
It's a great question. As we kind of mentioned before, everybody's taste is a little different. Some people like really rich chocolatey, notes in their coffee. Some people like really acidic, floral, fruity notes. That's, a very wide variety of people, and there's everything in between. Some of that is driven by the different regions of the world that the coffee comes from and how the coffee is processed. Is it natural? Is it washed? Is it sourced, from a single farm? Is it treated with all the necessary steps to kind of certify that it's good quality? Because even that, there are certain levels of like defects that they test coffee for as it's imported, and it has to hit certain standards to be sold as specialty coffee. If it doesn't hit that standard, it can still be roasted and ground and sold on some of the grocery store shelves, even if it's not up to the specialty coffee standard. So there's higher standards of perfection needed in the harvesting process. But then in the roasting process, we love coffee roasters. Now, we don't personally roast coffee ourselves. We help to market and ship and all that stuff. But we do work with roasters. So we have a roaster right now that does a lot of our products, and they roast for us But we actually just signed a deal with a second roaster who's going to offer exclusive products through us, and they're a local roaster to the state that we're in. And so what's awesome about that is together we're going to, and we've already started. I was actually doing tastings this week of a new product line. But we get to literally, we get to hone in how we want the coffee to taste, what flavors we want to bring out, how dark do we want to roast the beans, how much time, all of that stuff. We get to work that out and literally create a custom blend that is nowhere else in the world. Nobody else on their website is going to be able to say, I sell this exact blend, because it's custom to us and this local roaster that we're partnering with. So we're going to start to do more blends and more single origin stuff with that roaster to be able to offer exclusivity on some of our products as well. So roasting plays a big part. You can absolutely burn coffee beans, get them too dark, get them dried out, and they will, no matter what kind of love you show to them, they're just not going to do well.
Well, that's the coffee bean that has to have too much sugar, too much creamer, too much everything. You know, I've got a friend, I think I may have told you this before, John. I've got a friend, and she says, you know, I love the coffee. She said, but, you know, I don't really taste any of these flavors like you're talking about. I said, well, how do you make your coffee? And then she started to describe the half a cup of sugar and the half a cup of cream that she was putting in. I'm like, well, no wonder you can't taste it. You've disguised, I mean, all the flavors that the coffee offered with everything else. What's the face about, Bubs?
It's like, yeah, can I get a mocha frap with caramel drizzle, 1 shot of espresso, 2 shots of vanilla? Like, oh no.
What was funny is I went to a large coffee chain the other day, and I ordered a drink that I was just in a rush, and I just ordered. And they asked me, they said, at this coffee store, they said, do you want coffee in that drink? And I was like,
hang on a second. Wait a minute. It's a coffee joint.
I was like, that's a sad question, because that means a lot of people come through and order that drink and they say, don't put coffee in it. And then their expectation is that coffee tastes a certain way, and they're not even drinking actual coffee. So, you know, it's a wide variety.
All I know about the large chains, and see, and this is the thing, guys, if you're listening to what John says, the way it's roasted, the way it's prepared, the freshness of the coffee, that's what makes it better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'm gonna say this way. I have for years, especially when I was working, I would set up the coffee pot the night before, so that when I got up in the morning, I did not have to fix the coffee, and it was just there waiting me. All I had to do was pour it in the cup. Little did I know, by exposing the coffee grounds, even though they were mass-produced coffee grounds, that I was affecting the flavor, the bitterness, the aftertaste, all that, by letting that sit out in the air all night long.
Yeah.
You know.
And so to your question, you know, what makes good coffee and why is coffee not all the same? Well, there's a certain level of, you know, a basis, which is what's the quality of the coffee beans? You know, no matter what you do in preparing it, if you start with a bad product, you're not going to be much you can do to improve it. So freshness, quality of the beans, the roast level, is it lighter roasted, medium roast? Some people like the darker roast. Where's the roast level? That's your basis. But then you can absolutely take really good, really high quality coffee and brew it really bad. Your ratios can be off. You can do things that cause good quality coffee to still taste bad. And part of that is an education process. And one of the things that I also felt very passionate about doing in Coffeetarian was having a blog on there where I can, you know, say, hey, I learned this and I tried it and it works great. Now you go try it. Here's how to try these different things. And so we have a blog where occasionally I'll post, you know, a review of something or a method or a technique, or I'll talk about specific things to how to improve your coffee experience, because I don't want to keep all this information to myself. I want to share the love with coffee, which is something we say at Coffeetarian. So I want to be able to, even if I try something and I say, oh man, this is good, why wouldn't I want to call up the beard and be like, hey, you got to try this. This is awesome. And that's why we did the blog, right? Is we were trying to just be able to inform people. So there's little things. One of the things that was brought up at the beginning of the show, Where do I start if I want good quality coffee? Well, there's little things that people don't think about that can dramatically change their coffee brewing experience, and that's why not all coffee is the same. So one of the best examples, just right off the top, is coffee is very important, right? The coffee bean is very important. But the majority of what you're drinking in the beverage coffee is water, right? You're putting water in, it's extracting through the grounds, and you get nice, delicious coffee. But like 98% of it that you're drinking is water, and the coffee is just going in to give you the extraction. So one thing, when somebody says, I just don't really like the flavor of my coffee, I can't get it to taste good. One of the first things I ask them is, how do you prepare your coffee? Well, I put water in. Okay, let me take it back a step. Where do you get your water from? A lot of people say, what do you mean? That's a silly question. I walk over to my sink, I pour water into the coffee pot or whatever, the kettle, and that's where I get my water from. Just think about this. If the basis of making the coffee is water from your tap, if you try instead using filtered water, and I'm not saying hook up a big fancy filtration system in your house, I'm saying go to Walmart, get a $20 Brita pitcher, put water from your sink in there, and let it use a filter inside there. Throw it in the fridge or whatever. But I'm talking just a cheap filter pitcher.
Yep.
That will make a world of difference. So if you're saying, how do I get my coffee to taste better? If I've already got good quality coffee, but I'm still not happy with it. Well, let's start with our water source. I remember telling my parents, hey, try filtered water in your coffee pot. They came to me and they said, all right, literally, that was ridiculous how much that changed the quality of the coffee. They didn't believe me, but then they tried it and they were like, this is totally different.
Well, let me ask BUBBZI a question here real quick. So because coffee, the water does make a big difference.
Well,
but BUBBZI, you're kind of the youngest one in the process here. But because, I'm your dad. Yeah, I know your large jug of filtered water. I know. Yeah, it's crazy. He calls it Big Bertha, by the way. But I want to ask you a question. Since the obsession has really flared in the bearded household, as we'll call it, what do you think in the difference of the coffee before and the coffee now? Because, even though it's in the same household, we haven't talked about it a lot, but I want to know your take on the difference real quick.
Well, obviously, we have to talk about, the freshness or whatever. Now, you just doing your little chemistry experiments with, like, a pour-over, like, oh my gosh. We're talking about, like I said, I'm not here like, oh yeah, coffee. I'm like, yay, caffeine. I never really enjoyed a cup of coffee until I had my first pour-over. I think it was of, like, a snickerdoodle flavor.
Yep.
Oh my lord. Like, now that right there is a cup of coffee. So
well, and see, that just goes to show, he said, I never really had a good cup of coffee until then. We were making coffee for a long time thinking we were having good coffee. But then when we changed the kind of coffee we had, then we started changing the process. And I know, John, that somebody's still out there going, well, all coffee's the same. And besides that, it's too expensive to do all that. Now, guys, I'm on a budget. I'm on a budget. A podcast or so back, I told people, when I go shopping, I go see my buddy Clarence first because I'm looking for the deal. I'm trying to save a little money, right? Mm-hmm. So my Chemex, my French press, I think I got both of them for under $40.
Yeah,
on Amazon. So it doesn't have to be expensive, right, John? There are expensive things out there, but there are cheaper alternatives as you go,
right?
So that you can have that same experience.
Absolutely. So in kind of my progression, especially for people on a budget, and they say, how can I make the coffee better? First of all, again, coffee freshness. Where are you getting your coffee from? Order it from specialty coffee, order from a fresh roaster, but get good quality coffee to start with. So that's step number one. And you can find affordable coffee, even on our website, some of our more expensive stuff. We run deals sometimes. We have the sponsorship with the beer, with the Caffeinated podcast. If you use the special code BEARD, you get a discount on your first purchase. So there's ways to budget that, but get good quality coffee. Get you a little cheap Brita filter pitcher and use filtered water. That's not going to break the bank. Like I said, 15, 20, $30 for a nice Brita filter pitcher. The next thing I recommend is doing exactly what the beard said, and that's changing up how you brew the coffee. So that's buying things like buy a French press. You can get these for 15, 20, $25. Yeah. You can get them even at your local stores.
Which is by far one of my favorite cups of coffee, though, out of that French press.
Well, I mean, when you say probably even one of the more cheaper things is just grinding your own coffee as well.
Yeah, so the next thing I usually say, get a French press or get a Chemex, something like that. Get a V60. And then when you start looking at, all right, how do I step up again? Grinding your own coffee fresh. Even if you order from us and you order it ground, which we do offer already pre-ground option, it's still super, super, super fresh.
Right.
But as it sits in that bag, right, for however long it takes you to go through that bag, you're still the grounds have already kind of starting to degas. The freshness isn't there like it would be if you took those beans and you grinded them fresh. So the problem is there's a lot of grinders in the world, right? And grinders can get very expensive. Most people don't realize this, but you can get a little blade grinder, right? So I don't use this for coffee really, but you can get a little blade grinder that's it's a good start to your coffee grinding. Mm-hmm. But what you really want is a burr grinder, and a burr grinder can be a little bit more expensive. And I mean, I'm talking you can find burr grinders that are thousands of dollars. Right. So you might be saying, well, that's crazy. Like I'm not going to jump thousands of dollars on a grinder. And you can find grinders that are electric grinders for much cheaper than that. You can find a good burr grinder for a couple $100. But one of the cheaper options to get a good quality grinder is just to buy a hand grinder. So like something like this, a little hand grinder.
It do take more time now. Yeah,
it does take a little bit more time.
But consider it your workout before your coffee. I mean,
right. But again, if you're on a budget, right, and you might not have hundreds of dollars to spend on a grinder, this will get you the same quality because it's got burr blades inside of it. It is a manual crank, but you're talking high quality grind for much cheaper price than if you're buying an electric grinder. And those work in a pinch, and it takes a little muscle, but I mean, it works in a pinch, and that elevates your game.
And see, guys, you might be thinking, well, I don't, I just have it ground myself. Why would I want to go to all the process of grinding it myself? Because there's settings on these grinders. And depending on where you set it, whether you want it a little bit finer, I mean, you can go all the way down to espresso grind if you want to or whatever, or a little bit coarser. As John talked about, the different notes, the fruity flavors, the chocolate notes, depending on where you set that grinder, coarse or fine, or anywhere in between, is going to change the flavor that you have in the same coffee that you have.
There's a reason we're calling it a chemistry experiment, is because you can change so much.
BUBBZI mentioned the snickerdoodle that we did get from a local roaster here, and John and I know the people that run it. They're super people. They're trying awesome to help people as well. Yeah. And but to go from the regular medium grind that we had on the snickerdoodle to I did the little bit coarser grind and did the French press, and BUBBZI was like, "Why does this taste so good?"
It took an already great coffee and just skyrocketed it. So
now,
right.
If you want to know why grind, that's what he said. It takes already great coffee and makes it better.
Right. And there's a science behind that, in that if you want, like, let's say your flavor profile, you have a coffee and you say, I tend to like the sweeter notes, or I tend to like the chocolatier notes. If you will grind what's called more coarse, so instead of looking like powder, it looks more like sea salt, right? Mm-hmm. If you grind it more coarse, you'll pull a lot of those chocolatier notes out, especially in something like a French press. Maybe you like the brighter notes. My wife really likes the floral, fruity notes, the brighter notes. If you grind finer, that's going to actually pull some of those notes out to the front, because it's actually, you think about what a grind is doing, what the grind size is doing. It's changing the surface area that the water can come in contact with the grounds. Now, it's doing it on a very small level because we are talking grounds, but nonetheless, it is science, right? So the surface area that the water is coming in contact with those grounds as it's extracting the coffee flavors into that water, the different sizes tend to pull out different notes because of how much the coffee or the coffee grounds are able to be exposed to the water. So it all makes a difference. Every single bit of this makes a difference.
Now, one of the and John is going to do us a little demonstration here in just a second. Show us a really good pour over technique. And one of the things that we did mention, like, where do you start? He's talking about you can get, have a Chemex, which is a pour over, French press, which is basically a, kind of a pour over as well.
Yeah, I'll show you a Chemex.
And
so this is a Chemex.
Yeah.
It's like a pour over.
Yeah, and it makes excellent coffee, by the way. It does take time, right? And one of the things that we neglected to mention, or I forgot to mention, was that you're going to need a decent little digital scale.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because it is a science experiment. If you go into a laboratory, they don't just willy-nilly, okay, let's try this, let's try that, and just throw it in and see what happens. They weigh everything out so that they know that this much this, because a couple of grams of beans can change the entire flavor profile of whatever you're trying to make.
Yes.
If you put less water in it, it changes the flavor profile. If you put more water in it, it changes the flavor profile. So all those little things. So you'll also need a digital scale. So John, why don't you, and since we're just talking about it, why don't you just give us a little demonstration? Show us what you got there.
Sure. Yeah. Let me put some water in the kettle and get it heated up, and then I'll talk through kind of what I'm using.
All right. Now,
But,
you notice he said he's putting water in the kettle and heating it up.
Right.
Why would he do that? Because he wants a specific water temperature before he starts his pour.
Yeah, I have a temperature controlled kettle, so it'll actually achieve whatever degree I want, from boiling down to 150 degrees or whatever exact temperature I want, and then it'll keep it there. So temperature controlled, and then I can set it to, typically I aim for about 205. I aim for 205, and then it'll hold it there. And you say, well, I don't have a temperature controlled kettle, so what do? The best way to do it is bring your water to a boil. You hear it bubbling and everything, and then pull it off and just let it sit for about 15 seconds. And once you hear the bubbles stop, 15, 20 seconds, that water temperature is coming down to about perfect temperature for you to do a pour over or something like that. So I'll get that going real quick, and then we'll also kind of talk about the different things we're going to see, and I'm going to use. We'll switch to a camera angle.
Well, and while he's getting the water together, I know there's going to be somebody going, this sounds like too much of a process, right, Bubba?
Filter pitcher.
Filter pitcher.
Well, and I mean, we're not saying, this needs to be how you make coffee every single time either. We're giving examples of here's ways that you can make better coffee, how you can experiment with what you want to have in your coffee. Because like I'm saying, I'm sure he doesn't do a pour over every single day in the morning.
No, I use a coffee pot for most mornings.
Yeah. Because of time constraints, because a good cup of coffee takes time. It's just, sorry guys, I'm a big guy. I'm going to say it. You want a good meal, you don't go through the drive-through.
Right.
You work on the meal. You take the time to cook everything properly. You want a good cup of coffee, it's going to take a little time.
Right.
Now, everything that John showed, the hand grinder, all that stuff, you can get an electric grinder. You can spend a little more money on it, which it's a time saver. But you can still get consistency with all of it, but it's going to take a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things, John, and BUBBZI, you all can tell me if I'm wrong. I almost think making a good cup of coffee, and this is with a lot of coffee chains out there, I really think that making a good cup of coffee is a lost art, almost.
Yeah, and especially in small towns, some of the bigger towns, they have like those coffee shops where you walk in and they have baristas who they're not just, not to kind of come down on anybody, but some people, they work at a coffee shop because they just want to make some money and they just need some cash in their pocket. And there's no problem with that. It's honest work. That's awesome. But there are some people who go and they become a barista and that becomes a passion of theirs. Mm-hmm. And it's not just about working for a big chain. It's literally about the passion of coffee making and really getting people to experience coffee that changes their perspective on coffee. And so I've actually been to some of these little coffee shops, but they're usually around bigger cities and stuff where you've got baristas who win medals and compete in like barista championships, and they do latte art championships, and those guys
Did you
and
catch
girls who
that,
have a
guys?
passion
There's
for it.
coffee competitions out there. Hello, come on.
Absolutely. They're huge. There's huge competitions for it. James Hoffman became famous because he won a world barista, not United States. He's in England, but he won the World Barista Cup Championship. So it's absolutely a lost art, though, for most people.
It is. And of course, now I know that BUBBZI and Mama Beard they're real happy that I'm a little obsessed with coffee, because I do the same thing the same way every time. Now, that's if I'm doing pour over or if I'm using my coffee pot. I am very precise about what I do with it and how I do it, because I want it to be a consistently good cup of coffee. And that's the thing with any of it, guys. Like I said, you can do it on a small budget. You'll spend a little bit, $20 probably on a digital scale if you want to use one of those.
Yeah, anything that measures grams, you're good.
The pot, depending on what you get, is probably going to run you between $20 and $30, depending on how much you want to spend on it. Probably not much more than that. Or you can go. I mean, you can get into some expensive coffee equipment, but there's golfers out there that spend thousands on a golf club. A golf club. Notice I didn't say golf clubs.
That's right.
Right.
And it just comes down to if it's something that you really are passionate about, then for the price of it, just a really entry-level okay coffee pot, you can get things like the scale, the kettle, and a pour-over, and completely change your coffee game. Right. I mean, 100%. And if you find that, hey, I really like this, maybe you're only out $100 at that point, tops, for everything. And you say, you know what, that made a difference. That's going to justify you saying, hey, I want to investigate this a little bit more. I want to spend a little bit more money. What can I do to the next level and the next level? That's how I got into it. I didn't drop thousands of dollars on coffee equipment to get into this thing. I said, hey, I'm going to go buy a $15 Chemex. I'm going to buy a little, $10 scale. And I've just upgraded my equipment as I've seen that it's made a difference. Right. But you got to start somewhere.
Well, as John said early on in this, we've known each other for a while. John blessed me with some of his, I don't want to say hand-me-down equipment, but as he upgraded, so did I. Let's just say it that way, right? And it's just like it's hard to explain other than to put it in, for me, in the context of food, okay? Because I make stuff, like everybody else. If I've got fresh stuff, I make fresh stuff. If I need to, I use canned. But I've had people say, well, that can't be canned because it tastes too good. And I'm like, well, how do you fix yours? Well, I put it in the pot. I turn the heat on. When it's hot, I serve it. That's not cooking. Okay. That's just heating. Right. And if it's kind of the same way with coffee. If you just throw it in there and you make coffee, you're heating up coffee. That's it. You're not making coffee.
Right.
But if you take a little bit of time and do that, then you're good to go.
That's right. So kind of talk through this a little bit. So here I've measured out, you see these are, here we go.
There you go.
There we go. Coffee beans. This is actually our Guatemala single origin, but you can see it's still whole beans, right? So what I've done is on my scale, I've measured out, this is 18 grams of coffee. And a good ratio to start with, if you're trying out a new coffee or you don't know where to start, kind of the golden ratio of coffee is usually around a 1:16. And what that means is I'm going to put 1 part coffee to 16 parts water. So 18 grams of coffee, and I'm going to use 300 grams of water, which is, close to, it's a good size normal 1 cup serving, right? Typically a cup is about 5 ounces to 8 ounces. But we in America kind of think of like a cup of coffee being more like 10, 15 ounces. So this is 300 ounces of water, but it's 18 grams of coffee. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use my hand grinder, and I'm just going to pour it in. So I've got the coffee in there, and that goes in the little bottom here. And then I put the cap on, and I have it set. This has different settings. I don't know if you can see this different numbers here, but I have it set on 4.
I'm going to make John a bigger picture and put me and the beard over on the side.
Okay.
So there we
Okay.
go. They should be able to see you like big now.
So this has different numbers, and these numbers correlate to different grind sizes. 6 being coarse, 1 being really fine, and you can get some that have different steps that go to like 30 and 40, just depending. But I put it on 4 because that's about a good pour-over coarseness in this specific grinder. Now, your grinder may be totally different, so what you got to do is you got to play around with it, which is part of the fun. That's why I like doing it. Play around with the different grind settings, right? So you just crank this little guy around, and it's grinding the coffee in the burr grinder, and we'll see the end result here in about 5 seconds. So.
Man's got his pinky out. It's all fancy, you know?
And yeah, he's got his pinky out. He's all fancy. Did you see that? Right?
All right.
All he needs is some good music to go with it.
That's right.
Hey, I've
So
got
it's
some
done.
royalty-free music we can put in.
And now we see
Now,
the
I want you guys
result
to know this
grounds.
before he does this, too. He used a hand grinder. Did it really take that much time for him to get what he wanted? No.
Oh, that smells nice too.
I
wish you guys could. Can you see? Yeah, smell it.
Smell of vision.
That smells good.
Oh, that's the
All
first
right.
thing I did when we got to Columbia, John. I opened the bag, and I'm like,
He's like,
You
here,
know,
smell
no.
it. He's bringing it around the house. Mama bitch, smell this.
So I'm going to switch cameras to my pour over angle so you guys can see, and we'll actually go through doing the pour over.
Okay.
Let me work that out real quick.
I may have to adjust it again, but that'll be fine. Oh, hey,
There we
it
go.
just worked straight. Sweet. So I've still got John big. So also, audio listeners, we are, like I said, we're doing a live walkthrough of how to make a good cup of coffee. If you want to see this, check out the YouTube video. And like I said, it will be on the screen.
and guys, while he is setting it up, we're going to say this as well. Like, comment, share, subscribe. You know?
Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah. Let us know what you think, guys, because, you know, coffee is an obsession. That's why we're doing it this way. This is a little different for BUBBZI and I, the way we do things, but coffee is an awesome thing to go with. All right, John.
Right, so the first thing I've done, this device here is called a V60, a Hario V60. And V60s can look different kinds of ways. I'll show another example real quick here. This is another kind of V60. It's a glass V60 that just sits on top of a coffee mug. The one I've got in the camera now is a little bit bigger because it has a built-in carafe. So you can make bigger portions. You don't just make one serving size. You can actually make a bigger portion. But I've got my paper filter, and you can have white bleached filters or unbleached filters. Even that can make a little bit of a difference. This is a bleached filter, but it's just a little triangle cup thing. And you put the filter down in. Now, a lot of people think, all right, the first thing you do is pour the coffee in. But actually, the best way to go about this is to take your kettle that's been boiling or set to a temperature, and just kind of wet the paper filter down a little bit. And all you're doing is you're making sure that any of that papery kind of taste in the filter is getting washed out, and that you're heating this inside area, right? So now what do? You have a little bit of water in here, so you have to dump the water. So I'm going to dump this out in my sink.
Come on, guys. This has to tweak the science experiment in every kid that's watching this. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
I feel like I'm back in
and every
chemistry
grown-up
class.
kid, it's like, ooh, yeah.
Now, the next thing I do for a pour over specifically is I take a small little stick, and the best thing I found is using a chopstick. Right, so this is a metal chopstick, one of the reusable ones, but I actually put it right here in the middle, and I'm going to pour the grounds of coffee over top of it. Now, you'll see this is on a gram scale, and I keep hitting this tear button, and that's just to kind of re-level it out to 0, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour the coffee on top, that fresh ground coffee that I just ground, and you can see it. I don't know if you can see it on the scale, but it's 18.3. So right around 18 grams of coffee is what we're shooting for. Now, why did I put the chopstick in there? That looks silly, right? The chopstick is actually a method that's going to help us create a little pocket in the grounds. It's going to give us two things: a target to shoot for when we first pour, but it's also going to kind of pack the grounds in a way that's going to allow extraction to happen. If I pour the coffee as it is right now with it piled up, if I pour the coffee, the water's going to hit the top of the pile and it's going to shoot it out to the sides.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going to create a divot that's not going to actually get down into the bottom of the coffee grounds to extract it very well. So what I can do is I can make a little kind of volcano looking pit, like an inverted pit. And you can see that there's now a circle right there. Now, some people say, I can just do that with my hands. The problem is when you're mixing it up with your hands, you might actually disperse the coffee a little too much. But using something like a chopstick or a little tiny stick, that just gives you the perfect level of circular motion. And you can see it's created a little pocket there, right? So there's a pocket. And what I'm going to do is tear the scale. Now I'm at 0. So 18 grams of coffee, paper filter wet. And now we're going to do our first pour. Remember, our goal is 300 grams. But the first pour we want to do is called the bloom phase, and we just want to pour to about double the size of the coffee. So 18 grams, I'm going to aim for somewhere around 40, okay? So I'm going to be watching my scale, and I'm going to aim right in the middle of that little hole, and then I'm going to spread it around, all right? I hit 50, so not too bad. And you can see that it's just going to sit there for a minute, and I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to let it go for about 30 seconds. And what it's doing in the bloom phase is this coffee is actually releasing any pent-up carbon dioxide, CO2 that's in the coffee grounds. It's actually releasing that and kind of blooming up. And the fresher the coffee is, the more it will bloom. So if you get something right off roast, this is off roast for a little while, but if you get something right off roast, it sometimes will even kind of balloon up. But about 30, 35 seconds, I'm going to pour my second round. And here I'm going to go for about 100 on the scale total. And I'm just kind of agitating the grounds. And then I do a little technique here that James Hoffman talks about, which is just spinning. So why do I spin? Okay, I spin because it's pushing the grounds around and allowing the water to cover evenly all the way across, right? So now I'm going to wait for about 40 additional seconds. Okay, so we went about 30 seconds on the bloom phase. We're going to go about 40 seconds on the second phase. I'm at 107. We're aiming for 300. So I'm going to do 2 more pours, each around 100 grams. So I'm going to take us from 100 to 200 and then 200 to 300. That's what we're aiming for. So right now that coffee is extracted through. The grounds are nice and saturated. They're pretty even. I'm going to grab the
while he's
kettle.
getting the thing to do the pot, let me say this real quick before he pours, or as he's pouring. You may think, man, this just takes too much time. It's too much of a process. But see, the thing about it is, with a good cup of coffee, whether it's a good roast, whatever it is, if you have a consistent process that you do over and over again, guess what you're going to have? A consistent, good cup of coffee every time. You know, you're going to have a good, consistent meal every time. You know, and it's all in the learning how to do it. And for those of you that say, well, I don't have this much time, nobody has this much time all the time. But once you try it one time, I guarantee you'll come back.
And there's a reason why this yields better coffee than just your typical coffee pot. A typical coffee pot doesn't pause for a bloom phase and release that gas.
Right.
It doesn't evenly extract and then spin and ensure that you're getting a blanket to cover that. What we want to see, and what you'll see here, you're already starting to see, but here's our last pour from 200 to 300. On the last one, I'm going to go kind of slow because I don't want as much agitation as the first couple. But what we're going to see is when I finish here, the coffee grounds should create kind of a flat bed. I'm not even going to spin the last time. But it's going to create a flat bed. Keep in mind, we started with a pile of coffee. We spun it, and it created a divot. Now we've poured it, and as it's pulled down in its last drawdown phase of the extraction, the bed is kind of flat. There's not one side that's scooped up. There's not one side that's piled up. It's pretty flat, all things considered. Your coffee pot, a lot of times when you pull the grounds out, you might see a giant divot in the middle where it's just splashed coffee or water down on top of the grounds. Or maybe it's moved things around. But here, we see there's not extra grounds pushed up. We see that it's all pretty centrally located, and it's pretty flat, right? So the beautiful thing there is it's taken the time to let the gases release. It's taken the time to evenly distribute the water, not compress it down, to allow it to cover all of the grounds in different time increments. And here we are talking. I'm done. We poured exactly 300 grams on the scale. And I want to tell you that in the timer, it says we're under 4 minutes. So even though that seems like a long time, really, that took us less than 5 minutes. And I know that the kettle takes a little while. So you could pour water in the kettle when you get up in the morning, set it to boil, and, go do your morning routine, brush your teeth, put on some deodorant so people can be around you, things like that, right? Come back, grab the kettle.
We thank you all of you who shower. Yes, we do.
Right.
I'm just saying.
and you literally have really fresh, really high quality coffee, and it took you less than 5 minutes, even though it seems like it took a long time.
Yeah.
It's really not that bad. Now, so let's do a pour real quick. So I'm just gonna get rid of the filter. We got our little Coffeetarian cup there. I don't know if you can see it, but got a little Coffeetarian mug. So another thing that I like to do when I pour is I like to get height, which is going to be a little tough because of the camera, but putting air in the coffee distribution, even that will bring out some notes. So what I do is I like to pour. Let me move the filter basket before I create a mess. So I pour, but then I kind of raise it up. Might make a little mess, but that's all right.
That's all right. Little mess, good coffee, it's all worth it.
But this cup of coffee, I'm telling you, if you taste it, it's going to be so much better than what your coffee pot can produce because it's fresh, freshly ground, filtered water, a good pour over technique with some different things for you to try out. And the end result is going to be coffee that I'm telling you, it's just beautiful. Let me hold on 1 second. Clean up a little bit of my mess here.
So what do you think, BUBBZI? You ready to try the Chemex?
Well, I mean, maybe. I don't know. Like I said, I'm here for the caffeine, man. Oh.
But this is why I have a dedicated coffee bar in my house, because I make a mess out of everything.
There we go.
Now we have good quality coffee, under 5 minutes, freshly ground, filtered water, good technique, and this V60 you can get on Amazon. It's not expensive. I don't exactly remember the price, but it's under $50, and you can get this, and it's awesome quality.
And like John said earlier, for those that hopefully at this point in the podcast are even thinking about it, try the coffee from Coffeetarian. It's good. It's good quality coffee for one. That'll work in your regular coffee pot.
Right.
But if you're like, okay, I'm ready for my first science experiment, you can get a Chemex, which is a pour over for under $20 on Amazon.
Yeah.
Right. You can get you a teapot. You can do the same thing. I mean, you can boil water on the stove without having to do the teapot.
That's right. You just put it in a pot.
You just got to put it into something that makes it easier to do the pour over.
Yeah.
You don't have to invest a whole lot of money in this. But, we've talked about how to do it, the way to get started. We've talked about the coffee itself. We've talked about the coffee company, and see, one of the things is, John and I have been friends for years. We've and we've had conversations about a lot of things. But the funny thing is when him and I start talking about coffee, it's the people that are watching to try to understand what we're talking about. Like, why are you all talking about? It's just coffee. Okay. But it's not. It's, to me, and maybe I'm looking at it a little simply. I tend to do that. But I always remember as a kid, people going with my grandmother and the other people that I'm with, hey, man, let's just go out and have a cup of coffee and talk. Right? Coffee is one of those things like food that can bring people together in a way that other things can't. So, and we've got so many things in this world trying to pull us apart, to keep us divided. Why not get involved in stuff that will bring you together, that will allow you to help other people? I mean, BUBBZI and I, you for those of you that are here, you've been here long enough to know that BUBBZI and I do not lack opinion. Okay. So, but we really wanted John to talk tonight. We wanted him to share about the coffee. He shares the same love for coffee I does. BUBBZI says it jokingly that he's here for the caffeine, but he loves the coffee. I don't care what he says. Right. But see, that's the thing, John. For me, coffee brought you and I together in a way that we wouldn't have been before, because we started talking about how cool it is to be able to do this. And, like you said, the demonstration he did was awesome. It's 4 minutes for a cup of coffee. I can make almost a whole pot in 4 minutes. You can, but it's not going to be the same coffee.
It won't taste like that.
I'll even challenge you all out here. I'll challenge those that are listening and watching this. If your favorite coffee is Maxwell House, all right? If your favorite coffee is Maxwell House, I challenge you to buy a Chemex and make Maxwell House in a Chemex and make it in your coffee pot and see which Maxwell House tastes better.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not down in Maxwell House Folgers, any of the name brand. I'm not doing that. What I'm saying is technique, consistency, time, whatever the coffee is, you can take some bad coffee and make it better. Right.
Yes.
It's not going to be great coffee. I'm sorry, but it's just not going to be. Right. And, I've tried a whole bunch of different coffees. I've tried coffees from all over the country, that they get from different places. Right. There's even one company now that I have a subscription to. They send me coffee every month. Well, I'm getting ready to do away with them. All right. Not because I don't like that I don't like their coffee. And it's not that I don't like what they support, because they give a portion of every sale to veterans. And I really appreciate that. The reason that I say that is, from the bottom of my heart, Coffeetarian's coffee is better. Mm-hmm. I'd rather have it coming from them every month because it's smoother, it's less bitter. Not that theirs is not good, but why not support? Because I'm still going to be able to do the same thing. I'm still going to be able to take my money and support humanitarian causes. I'm going to be able to support different things.
Yeah.
And guys, if y'all haven't figured it out yet, that's the coolest thing about Coffeetarian, right?
And the cool thing is too, with the nonprofits we work with, when we partner with them, we love to take their logos and create exclusive t-shirts. So that way, when you buy a t-shirt, maybe it's an organization, maybe it's like a veteran organization. We're getting ready to try to partner with a pretty big one here local to us. And so it's that notion of maybe you really like that organization. And when we partner with them, we offer an exclusive t-shirt that you're not able to find anywhere else on the market. You buy it from us, you get a t-shirt with your charity that you support already. But even in doing that, the money goes towards that charity directly as well. And that's the cool thing. It's all about just helping each other out and raising awareness.
So, BUBBZI, I know we haven't talked that much tonight. What do you think? What do you think about the whole coffee lifestyle?
I like caffeine. No, but to be serious, like, I drink coffee every morning. Like, first of all, I used to talk for a living. I used to work in a call center. Needed something to, prime your voice first thing in the morning. But also, you gotta wake up. Like, coffee's great. There's a reason that it is probably one of the most selling, sources. Most, like,
probably source of caffeine is what you're going for.
What am I trying to say? Bro, I can't talk. Okay. This is the problem. Like, I don't know if people understand, like, the funny moments, like, those are difficult, and, like, we're not even doing a script this time. Like, imagine if we tried to run through the script right now. Okay, I would fail.
No.
But there's a reason why coffee is so mainstream like it is because people enjoy it, people like it. So why not get the best?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not buy a good quality coffee? Are you going to spend a little more in the outset? Probably. But when you start, we're using it kind of as a funny term, the science experiment of coffee. To make good coffee, you're not going to use as much coffee as you're using now in your coffee pot to make bad coffee. Sorry, but I mean, it's just that simple. Because the better the better quality of the coffee, it's the more the flavor, the more you eat, the more you get out of it. So,
and I just want to add one thing real quick. Like the Beard said earlier, the awesome thing too is knowing that every time you're brewing a cup of coffee or a pot of coffee with coffee that you buy from us, every time you can have satisfaction in knowing that you helped do a part to help somebody in need, that you supported a charity or a nonprofit that helped somebody who was in need. And so, yes, you got to enjoy coffee and you got to play around with the flavors and you got to do different things, try different regions of the world. Right. And that's awesome. But every cup of coffee you're making, you're enjoying it. And that love you just shared with somebody else because you supported a great cause. And that's the heartbeat of our company.
And that's the reason for the wall. That's the reason that we drink the coffee, you know. But for me, and you know, if you all haven't been here long enough to understand that I think too much, you know, you heard the overthunk. Yeah, well, you've heard the overthunk comments. Oh. I think I need a T-shirt with overthunk made on it, to be quite honest. But I think about this stuff, and one of the things I remember most about coffee, and I'll share this with you guys and everybody else, is when I was a kid, my grandmother had this old big silver percolator, you know, the bloop, 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 bloop. And she would sit down and she would drink her morning coffee. And, you know, at a certain age, you're like, come on, let me have a cup of coffee, right? She knew that I wasn't going to like it. So it was about that much milk, right? And about that much coffee. But we started doing that at the kitchen table. And her and I would talk about the day and all that kind of stuff. You know, there's a reason that my TikTok lives are called Caffeinated Connections, you know, because as much as I love coffee, coffee can be used to bring people together. You sit down and have a conversation just like you do over a good meal. You can share your love of something that's as simple as a really good cup of coffee. And I started saying it earlier, but guys, the simple, for me, it's overly simple. If we can do things that draw us together and be positive for each other, then we're going to be strong for everybody else. You know, John supports us. We support John, right? They support Educate Liberia and New Breed this month. You know, it's all about lifting people up. Yeah. Right. You know, and the coffee is the icing on the cake. The coffee itself really is not the cake, y'all. Right? It's the connections that you can make. It's the stories that you can tell. It's like, hey man, I bought this bag of coffee. It was really good. But let me show you a picture. If we ever get a chance to put pictures of the school that I helped build because I bought a bag of coffee.
Come on. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Let me tell you about the veteran that I met that got helped because I bought a bag of coffee. Yeah. Guys, it's all about literally, you know, he said that he started out with tea, that, you know, that there's a tea community and there's a coffee community out there. Believe me, John and I are not the only two coffee nerds in the world. We're not the only ones that love the science. And, you know, if so, James Hoffman wouldn't have how many subscribers on YouTube? I mean, come on, y'all. Yeah. Right?
Wouldn't have a
so
book.
let's get connected over a good cup of coffee. Yeah. Let's have a little fun. Let's laugh. You know, let's do this. Let's become that community. You know, that's what BUBBZI and I are trying to create, hopefully, with the TikTok stuff, with the podcast stuff. You know, you all know what I'm about to say here when I get done. These are our closing thoughts, and I want John to have one, and I want BUBBZI to have one as well. Or BUBBZI, you can go first and let John close, however you want to do it. All right. But for me, it's all about connecting with somebody else. It's letting them know that I care. And I mean, and I know it sounds overly simple and I'm getting a little too deep on it and I'm sorry, but if I don't like you, I'm not going to share my coffee, y'all. Right?
You got touching my pot.
But if this is something that touches me, that it's good, and I want to touch you and I want to help you, then I'm going to share the stuff that I'm passionate about. It doesn't happen, just happens to be a little bit of coffee, but it's about everything else. right? It's a joke. If I hear a good joke and you're having a bad day, I'm going to tell you the joke because I want you to smile. Same reason I want you drinking a good cup of coffee. Nobody wants to go to work with the guy that had the bad cup of coffee because he's going to be in a bad mood all day. Right? So check it out. That's all I ask. Right? Go to coffeetarian.store. Look at the different blends. Right now, Mexico is my favorite. This is in close running. I may have to put them both on level 1 because this Colombian, guys, is supreme. It's superb. I really like it. And of course, then there's the Mexican chocolate because it's got a little bit of chocolate in it. You can't go wrong with chocolate, right? But go to the store, check out all the different blends. If you want a good medium one to start with, check out the Cowboy blend. That's usually what I tell everybody to start with.
Yeah.
And then when you find what you like or you find some flavors in there that you think sound good to you, when you check out, put in Beard, BEARD, at discount, and you'll get 10% off your first order. But yet you still get 10% off the order, but you get 100% of the blessing that you bestowed on somebody else because you bought a bag of coffee.
That's right.
Right? So, guys, if you have been here through this totally different type of podcast for us, and you've hung in here this long, you know what I'm about to say, right? From this time to the next time, welcome to the family.
And obviously, I think we have to let John go.
Right.
This could be closing thoughts. If you have social media, you can go ahead and plug that for Coffeetarian. There's places where, like, hey, we have pictures of the people we've helped, especially
BUBBZI,
like schools.
go ahead and give our social so that when he does his, we can just do our outro and head out, please.
Oh, okay. Well, you can find the Beard at the Caffeinated Beard basically on everything. You can find me at It's BUBBZI. That's ITSBUBBZI, basically on everything. And then we're gonna hand it over to the Coffee Man.
Awesome. Well, I want to say, first of all, thank you so much to the Beard and to BUBBZI for having me on the show, on the Caffeinated podcast. It's been an absolute honor for us to partner with you guys and to sponsor you guys' podcast, but then to be a guest on the show and get to just talk about something that we're all passionate about. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of what you guys are doing because it's so needed and so special in this time, and we will continue to support you guys 100%. So thank you so much for having me. I want to thank all of the people who have ever bought from our store up to this point. Small businesses, they are kept alive by community and by local support. We have so many people that I could list for just days, names of people who have reached out, who have bought from us, loved on us, supported us, encouraged us to go forth and keep doing the things we're doing to help these charity causes. So if you've ever bought from our store or you've ever given us an encouraging word or anything like that, I just want to thank you because we wouldn't be a small business that exists without the community around us who support us, who buy from us, and who help our organization. So absolutely, you can find us on Facebook. Search for Coffeetarian.store on Facebook, Coffeetarian.store on Instagram, and then Coffeetarian_US on Twitter. We're mostly on Facebook the most, and then Instagram and Twitter. And as these guys awesomely mentioned multiple times, our marketplace is Coffeetarian.store. So if you go there, that's our website. Right there on the homepage, you'll see links to the current charity partnership that we're working with to build the school. You'll see links that'll take you to the background story. It'll show you pictures of the kids in the community that will be impacted by this school. It'll show you pictures of the area. So we have stories there. We also have the stories and pictures of the previous charities we've worked with. You can find that. You can find our blog. You can reach out to us and contact us, leave us a note, or mention a charity you'd love to see us partner with. You can buy products there. All of that, all of our marketplace is centered around Coffeetarian.store. So check it out. And like the Beard said, maybe you don't love coffee. Maybe you can't afford some of the merchandise. Just help us spread the word. And if you'll help us spread the word, you're still doing a huge part to raise awareness for people who are in need. So thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Man,
and thank you guys for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you.
We appreciate you being here, John. And I'm just going to say this before BUBBZI does us out. Guys, just remember, you can also drop a comment and let us know, and we'll make sure any information that you want gets to John and Coffeetarian. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the podcast. Let's get it out there so that Coffeetarian and you all and us together as a coffee community can literally change our world.
Yeah.
BUBBZI, to you, my friend.
Well, I guess at least I can say this has been a very caffeinated episode of the Caffeinated Podcast. Bye, guys.
See ya.